This is Bushmill's 10 year.
Tullamore Dew. I'm not sure how many. I guess 3 years, huh?
4 at least usually. Yeah. For most Irish. Been a while since I had the 10 year.
What I love about the Tullamore Dew is you can like smell the apricot. Or is it pear?
Is it pear? I actually haven't had Tullamore in a while.
Really?
But this Bushmill's 10, man. Like raisins.
Mm-hmm. Raisins and dates and stuff.
It's very good.
I almost brought over my bottle of my Forever bottle. Because that's got some of this. It's got some Bushmills. It's got the.
I want to try mine soon.
The rum cask aged one.
Oh,
man.
It's
got a little bit of Oh, what's it called? The bottle that it's in. Lead Slinger.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we gotta get rid of a bunch of stuff for Passover. Welcome to a conversation with Bradley and Seamus. That's Bradley. I'm Seamus.
Yes, Bradley. Seamus.
Yes, Bradley. Seamus.
Bradley. Seamus.
Bradley. Seamus. Here's what we do. We enjoy a glass of whiskey while we talk Bible. Today we're going to be talking about God's name. More specifically about sacred name, the movement. Usually I hear or see the word Jehovah quite a bit. And I know
Yahweh.
Yeah, or Yahweh as the Holman HCSB will put it. And I know that within the church or the greater Christianity movement in and of itself, that we're seeing a rise in making a point to pronouncing or saying the name and praying with it. So let's have a conversation about that. And I'm of the understanding that you would disagree with that.
Yeah, fundamentally and scripturally, I would tend to disagree with that. There's no blatant verse in the Bible that says you're supposed to, and actually I think there's a pretty legitimate case to be made that you're not supposed to pronounce the actual name of God, or what you may think the name of God is. We've already given 2 examples now as to what supposedly it could be, and those are just 2 that are more popular within Orthodox Christendom. But when you venture outside into some of the other fringes, the Hebrew roots movement and Messianic Judaism, you get a whole lot of other popular variants of it, from Yahweh as opposed to Yahweh, because
I've also heard Yahuwah before.
There's Yaba is another one.
Now I understand that we're basically beginning in Matthew 6. So why there? Why Matthew 6?
Well, I think predominantly because this is where we would see Jesus pray. From this example, I think the best reason we can start from here is because he actually very specifically does not say the name.
Your name be honored as holy, or holy be thou name. However, whichever translation you're reading. What would be your reason not to pronounce the name? Like, what's wrong with pronouncing the name?
Several reasons. First of all, you're commanded not to.
Are we?
Yes.
Do you have an example?
The Torah does say that we are to fear the Lord's terrible name. Okay. So that doesn't specifically say don't say it. However, if you're going to actively pursue the action of fearing his name, what that translates to in a Judaic mindset is not saying it. It's almost like the Harry Potter, he who must not be named concept. It's almost like, J.K. Rowling got it right.
Gotcha.
When you fear a name, you avoid saying it. And that's actually very much how the Jewish culture perceives that. They view that passage, the command to fear his name, to be a legitimate command against pronouncing the name.
Okay.
But other than that, I would probably say several other reasons. One being, you definitely don't want to I'm going to use the word profane because a lot of people are going to be familiar with that word. But that would translate to making it common, making it easily accessible.
So the command not to profane the name of God would also apply here then.
Absolutely.
One of the 10 Commandments. Or don't take the Lord's name in vain.
Yes.
Okay, so that's so we have it a couple of different instances in which we have warning after warning on not to say the name.
Yes.
Okay.
Matter of fact, actually, there is an example, even within the Torah, where a man is he has judgment carried out on him because he pronounced the name. That's going to be in. Let me turn to it. This Leviticus 24.
Mm-hmm.
If you can start in verse 10, that's kind of where you get the
I'll go ahead.
The premise of what's going on there. But
sure, I'll read it.
Read.
It says, Now the son of an Israelite woman whose father was an Egyptian went out among the sons of Israel, and a fight broke out between the Israelite woman's son and an Israelite man. The Israelite woman's son blasphemed the name and cursed. So they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelomit, the daughter of Dibri, of the tribe of Dan. They put him in custody until the will of the Lord could be declared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Bring the one who cursed out of the camp, and let all who heard him lay their hands on his head, and have the entire congregation stone him. Okay.
So he is executed.
So it says he blasphemed the name and cursed.
And it's been argued, I've heard it argued, that his crime was, the addition there, that not just that he blasphemed the name, but that he cursed also. So because he used the name profanely, in other words, context is what made all of the difference. Intent is what made the difference. And so the idea behind that argument as well, if we're using it and intending to praise, then it doesn't fall under the purview of this example. The problem there is the word vayikra, which we read as profaning the name there in that passage. That just means that he said it.
Interesting.
He pronounced the name, and that in English translates directly to profaning the name.
So essentially what you're saying is that the English doesn't do a really good job, that it should in Hebrew, it really reads that he pronounced the name and then he cursed, and that was his crime.
Yeah, well, because, so the Hebrew word vayikra is actually one that a lot of Christians would be familiar with in several other passages, and if you were to translate it that way, or at least in that context in this passage, it would probably better capture the idea. For instance, Isaiah, the Messianic passage, his name shall be called. That's vayikra.
Right.
Okay, to call, to say, to pronounce. And so in that context, I almost think maybe it wasn't intentionally translated less accurately.
I have open in front of me here Leviticus from Rashi, and he would agree with you that it should be pronounced, that the word vayikra, it's vayikrov, which is just a present tense form that he pronounced. So yeah, interestingly enough. So this brings us back to Matthew 6.
Yes, Matthew 6. So the interesting thing about Matthew 6 is, first of all, and understand we're speaking in the context of prayer mostly. I think most believers who are adamant about pronouncing the name, or what they perceive to be the name, they mean to do so more so in prayer, more so in praise. And so the example of Matthew 6 is pertinent because it's the Messiah himself telling us this is how to pray. Okay, so this is his formula for prayer. I'm going to call it a formula because at the end of the day, it actually is just a formula. It's an abbreviated version of
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah, I want to say the Amidah.
The standing prayer.
Standing prayer. Yeah.
Which, but even to that point, he opens the prayer with saying, "Our Father in heaven, holy is thy name." It kind of reminds me of how Jews speak today. Usually when they do refer to God in any way, they always say God, comma, blessed be he.
Yes.
Or something of that effect.
Yes.
So it seems super Jewish for him to open a prayer up like that.
Yeah. They'll always follow it with blessed be he, or his name be praised, or
right.
You know. And then they also do the reverse for Satan. You know, may his name be blotted out. Anytime that he's mentioned, it's may his name be blotted out. It's, you know, the idea of a name is very sacred in a Semitic culture, which would have been what Jesus grew up in. That's where this faith has its roots. Hence why the Hebrew roots movement feels the need to specify that it's Hebrew roots. Personally, I don't think they go deep enough with those roots in many aspects, and that's why this issue is a pretty hot button issue with them, actually.
So question then, so you've made your point, I think, that pronouncing the name is a big no-no. We've got a couple examples, it's one of the 10. So why do we hear different variations of this name? So
there's a couple of reasons. I know one of the primary ones is a confusion about the vowel point system in the Masoretic text. So the Masoretes, originally the Hebrew text had no vowel points.
Naturally.
I know you're aware of this.
Mm-hmm.
The Masoretes developed a vowel point system that caught on anywhere that you see the name, the Tetragrammaton. Okay, that's the name of God. It's funny, actually. We just discussed this on the Exodus passage we were going over. Is one of the first times that God introduces himself as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and that's the Hebrew letters that it would be. So, oftentimes in the Torah, you'll see the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh with vowel points there. And I think some people may get confused and try and work those vowel points into the letters themselves, because none of those letters are vowels. Anyway, the Hebrew language doesn't have vowel letters per se. That's why they have a vowel point system. And so because you see that, and they read it into it, and I think that's where probably the Yahweh and Jehovah come from, more or less. That's one reason. For several of the other variants, I've heard some conspiracy about the Masoretes trying to conceal the name, to hide it from believers so that they couldn't profane it or something like that. It's a big conspiracy. Other people will tell you that the Holy Spirit revealed it to them in a dream or something like that. But for the most part, let's talk about why those vowel points are there. Okay, if they're not meant to be said within the word itself, why would there be vowel points there?
That's a good question.
I think it's a valid question, because we read the vowel points with every other word in the Torah when we're reading Hebrew. So in Semitic culture, it's common practice when you see the Tetragrammaton to pronounce one of the other titles in its place. Usually either Elohim or Adonai. Those would be the two primary ones, or just Hashem, which means the name in Hebrew.
Right.
But Elohim or Adonai. So the context would depend on the attribute that is being appealed to. So Adonai in Hebrew would translate as master, or sir, lord. You know, the same way that the Old English would call someone a lord of the land, or something like that. So when appealing to the majesty, the word Adonai would be used, and so the vowel points for the word Adonai would be in place over top of where the Tetragrammaton is placed. And then likewise Elohim being the judge, that's the one that you would appeal to for mercy. And so anytime that you see a prayer appealing to the name for mercy or on behalf of others or something like that, the vowel points for Elohim would be over the Tetragrammaton there. And it's a clue. It's not so that you read it with the Tetragrammaton interwoven into it, It's so that you understand, oh, that's the word I'm supposed to say instead of pronouncing the name.
Yeah, I don't think most people understand that when they see that in the Torah text.
No, not at all. It's something that really you wouldn't understand if you didn't have a foreknowledge of Semitic culture. You kind of have to look deeper into Judaism to gather that, because a rudimentary surface deep look at Judaism is not going to yield that kind of knowledge.
As I understand it at the moment, those 4 letters are basically all silent letters, and that the pronunciation has been lost. Am I wrong in saying that?
I don't know if I would say lost per se.
Largely
certainly,
lost.
Yeah, certainly you could say it's for the most part been lost to time. There are some who say it's passed on by a select few rabbis to their disciples on their deathbed in a whisper. In other words, that's the only time you ever hear it, is when your rabbi is on his deathbed. It's going to be one of the last things that he says, and it will be silently. It will be such that only you can hear it, and that's when it's passed on. You hear it once in your life, and you never utter it again until you are on your deathbed. And so the knowledge of it could possibly still live on, but for the most part, as being common knowledge, yeah, I think it's decent to say it's been lost to time.
Seems like a protective measure to keep people from taking it in vain, so to speak.
Yeah, because there's really no way to know who knows it and who doesn't. There's no possible way to know that.
Not right now, anyway.
This can be argued about so much. It's such a short discussion because there's just no support for it in the Bible.
That's true. At no point, except for maybe the example in Mark where we see, Jesus recite the Shema, and even that's a weak argument because it's written in Greek, and usually if you ask any Jew to recite the Shema, he'll say Adonai. He will never pronounce the name. But yeah,
if Jesus was a good Jew, which we know that he was,
he never would have said
he
the name.
wouldn't have said it, and we know he didn't say it because the crowd didn't react
Yes.
The way that they would have if he had said it.
Especially within its context. At the time, they would have killed him if he had spoken the name.
He would have been a blasphemer, just like the guy in Leviticus.
Right.
It's not a long discussion to have. It's just, the people who feel about it the way that they do are very passionately so.
Like you said, really no one truly knows how to pronounce it.
No,
And with that, you get very different variants that I've heard. And I've even heard it argued that it's okay if you don't know how to pronounce it, at least say something. And
as long as you're making the effort.
And I feel like that's worse.
That's way worse. Because it's kind of like...
Imagine calling out the wrong name to your girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's safer to just say babe.
So, yeah, right? But you have, that's actually funny because it's a pet nickname. It's a title. It's something else. Right. It's a context-dependent, thing.
And in some cases, it almost means more.
But I think your name's actually a perfect example of this because it is a Gaelic name. So hardly anybody knows how to pronounce it properly unless they're already familiar with Irish culture. So how would you feel if somebody was like, look, it doesn't matter how you say it, just as long as you call him by one of these, and then they give you a laundry list, and one of them is Seamus, and one of them is Seamus, and Seamus, and Seaman, and...
Yeah, Sesimus. I've got
Sesimus?
That one.
Have you gotten that?
On my promotion day.
Really?
I promoted to corporal, Sesimus McGowan, into sergeant, Seamus, which, everyone always messes my name up, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's not cool. And of course you get the argument, well, God is much better than human beings. He knows the intent of the heart.
I think if your heart's in the right place, you would do your best to avoid saying it wrong. In my opinion.
Which would translate to don't say it.
Saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, going back to you shall not take the Lord's name in vain, I think that in and of itself is sort of the end-all be-all when it comes to this.
It is. It's honestly, it's a courtesy that we give to other people, okay? You're on the job. There's somebody new at work. You got introduced to them very briefly in 5 seconds one time, and you don't remember their name because that was 5 hours ago, okay? are you just gonna take a stab at whatever you think you heard their name was? Or are you gonna be like, hey, you?
Yeah, what was her? Can you mind? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Right?
You
Yeah,
try to be polite.
you will get their attention without substituting something for their name.
Because your heart is in the right place.
Yes. So, if that's a courtesy that we extend to the common man, why wouldn't we go so far as to do that for a God who's he's not just our God, but our Father and our King? So there we have the example in Matthew 6. He says, "Our Father." First of all, when was the last time you called your dad by his first name?
I've never done that.
It's just disrespectful. I mean, like, the thought of it, my life flashes before my eyes.
I just feel dirty thinking about it.
Right?
I'm like, hey, what's up, Patch? I'm not even gonna do it.
Nope, not okay. Now imagine a king.
Yeah, for certain.
In summary, I think, scripturally speaking, there's far more evidence for not pronouncing the name of God than there is for. Is that something you think that's been demonstrated here pretty well, or would you tend to agree at this point?
I would agree.
Okay.
I can't think of an instance in which anybody had ever explicitly pronounced the name, especially in the New Testament, and it being okay.
It's harder to argue in the New Testament because it's in Greek, so.
Right.
But yeah, good talk.
Absolutely not. No. We will raise a glass.
We will. We will raise a glass.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.